years, I mean, it was a passion of yours the whole time, I would believe, correct?
Oh, I loved writing the story. It was a labor of love. And I think when you were asking me questions about the writing process, that's where I should have started. I think that first and foremost, you have to love doing it. You have to love writing. You have to love creating a story. You have to love pulling in all the inspiration you've received from people you know, from other things you've read, because no one writes a story that's completely original. Even the great works of literature, I think, were inspired when you go back and look at those writers and those books, were inspired by other writers, at least in part, and that's true with me, very much so. Other people have inspired me.
I was going to say, people, we bounce off each other a lot. You know, I think I heard someone say that sometimes they enjoyed when being in a room and talking. You know, a bad idea was actually better than a good idea sometimes because it inspired all the good ideas. So sometimes you could pick up a book and look and go, well, that's a great idea, but maybe I could have done this, and you know, and put your own little twist on it and get in there. But you know, with this book, you did do a lot of research on this though, because you actually went in the different locations in the book. You actually went there, and did you spend a lot of time there, or just maybe a day or two, or how'd that work out for you?
I visited many of the locations in the book over a period of many, many years. So I didn't even know that this story was going to be written when I visited some of these places. But I retained the memory. At least I retained the memory of certain key things. For instance, the Heidelberg scene in the story was a place that I was a long, long time ago. I'd kept a journal back then. But I took that and I just expanded on it to do with the story what I wanted to do. Because I really don't, in writing the story, I want it to be believable, but I don't believe in a hyper-realism that means that someone has to be able to go there and count bricks on the street and match them up with the story. So I don't believe in that. I want to be able to take the story. I want the story to really be able to be governing rather than the location.
And what about the process? Because with your first book, Circling the Turtle, did you do all the editing on that yourself, as far as going back over it and critiquing how it was formed, the letter, and all that? I mean, did you do all that yourself, or did anybody help you in that process? Or
I did get some help with that editing process, but I did most of that editing myself. And I saw a big difference with Toward the Gleam and the editors at Ignatius Press, who are professional editors, and the work they did with me was really terrific. I think they made the book stronger, made the story stronger. Yeah. And so that editing process was invaluable to me.
So you definitely recommend that to any young authors out there? Anything, you know, definitely have somebody edit it with you, because we were talking about that earlier. You said you'd read in there, and it may be very good, but you can look at it, I can add more here or there, and is that quite a challenge? I mean, where could you? It's probably different for every person, but can you recommend anything as far as where to draw a line, where you find, do you sometimes just have to set it aside and just say enough, I have to leave it alone because you'll overdo it, or what would you say that way?
Well, if you're self-publishing a book, you definitely have to do that. Otherwise, you're going to go on with it forever. With Toward the Gleam, the editors finally told me when I was done. We had a production schedule for the book, a publication schedule, so they ran a pretty tight ship in terms of the various stages of editing that went on. And essentially they told me, okay, at this point, we're finished.
Gotcha. Did, with the writing process of this book, as you'd said, sometimes you'd write down something here, sort of there, and it kind of, you know, all came together. Did you write it in one complete order from beginning to end, or was it kind of a bit completed here, a bit completed there, and it kind of came together like that, or was it all one, you know, set format that way? How'd that work out for you?
I did start at the beginning and I worked to the end. But there were several chapters that were expanded significantly after the story was written. There were a couple of chapters that didn't make the published version.
Really?
And there were a couple of chapters that I thought were going to be sort of providing color for the story, but then became more important, and I went in a different direction with those chapters. So generally speaking, I worked from start to finish, but there was definitely some expansion and contraction of chapters after I had finished the main story.
Would you say in writing, as we were talking about that a minute ago, you said even the great things of literature throughout, the years were kind of ideas, it's maybe taken a little bit from another person. How do you maybe have an idea that someone else has, or is not somebody else's completely, but it gives you an idea? How do you take that and make it true to you? Because this is a book that's very unique in and of itself. It may have similarities to others, but it still has, Tom Dorian wrote that, and it has that feel and that flavor, different great authors and readers. You can always feel there's something about certain, just like a musician, you can feel with their music. How did you stay true to yourself on that one?
I do think that the main ideas of the story were original ideas, but I drew inspiration from, let's say, characters that I had read about in other books, scenes that really impressed me that could be modified to work in this story. And one of the things I had going for me in this book was that many of the characters, and that's part of the mystery that the reader is supposed to solve, but many of the characters in this story are based on historical characters. They're veiled, but they're based on real historical characters that were giants in their own way in the 20th century. These were people that have really inspired me, these historical characters. They battled a lot of the twisted ideas that caused a lot of misery in the 20th century. And so I brought them into the story, but I brought them in a way that was veiled, so that, for a couple reasons. First of all, to respect the historical characters themselves, but secondly, to give me a little bit of freedom to be able to take these characters to places, perhaps, that wasn't exactly where they were in their real lives. So there were a number of them. Some were major characters in the story, including the main character, and some were had cameo appearances. And so some of those mysteries, I've always loved mystery stories. I read a lot of mystery stories for fun. And so what I tried to do was really layer this book with many mysteries on many levels. And then some of them are explained in the book, but some of them I just left it up to the reader to try to ferret it out.
I was going to say, you did a good job when I was reading it. It was amazing how it was. It was, like you said, layered with the mystery. So you'd think just about the time you maybe got something figured out, something else came in, and it kept your mind busy. It was amazing how you were able to combine a good mystery and many mysteries while still telling a very good storyline. Sometimes you could tell a mystery and you get so lost in it, sometimes it's too hard, but you did very, very good at bringing ones in, and it still maintained a good pointed direction. It was, you shot for your goal, and I think you nailed it. I want to complete this book myself. I still haven't got to completely read it all the way through, but
thank you for saying that, by the way. That was my goal when I wrote the story. My primary goal, and I would talk to Sherry, my wife, about this, was for people to enjoy the book. That's the greatest reward that I get from writing, is when someone reads it and enjoys it. And even critical comments. I've learned a lot from critical comments that I've received on the book as well. Things that I can do better, certain things that I would do a little differently next time. So,
well, continuing this process, I mean, now that you've published this and it's coming, is it out yet? Is this something we can go buy, or if someone was wanting to get a hold of this, you know how other
this book, Toward the Gleam? Yeah, very, very much so. It's available. It's out there. And there's actually a website, towardthegleam.com, that people can go to. There are reviews that they can look at for the book. There's a Facebook page that's linked to that where people can to go, and I try to interact with the Facebook page too. So anyways, it is out there, and I've been gratified by the response so far to the book. Felt very good about it.
So you would encourage people. So you would definitely encourage people to give their opinions, because you just said that, to just express themselves, good, bad, otherwise. I mean, with it, don't. But I guess you get it.
I would. I think that it's hard for all of us to receive constructive criticism, but I think whether you're writing or in any path of life, that's one of the things that you learn the most from. So even though it may be hard to receive sometimes, if you take it to heart, you can learn something from it. You can do better in the future.
True. Very true. With this book being completed, are you satisfied with, are you looking forward to writing more? Is there something you're looking to continue upon? Because I believe you're hopefully very soon, will you be retiring within a couple of years or something of that nature, perhaps, maybe, or?
Well, I'll be retiring from full-time engineering.
Oh, okay.
Before long, and I do hope, and I do hope to have more time to be able to write. I have been working on another story. I love mystery stories, so even though this next book is not as apocalyptic as,
right.
as Toward the Gleam,
book.
it doesn't span all that time, and it doesn't involve some of the big ideas. It's still a mystery story, and it still deals with the things that I think matter most in life: meaning, purpose,
right.
The virtues, the temptations we all face, those kind of things. And it's I've said it in the Downriver, Detroit area, which is where I grew up. So a very different setting too than Toward the Gleam.
Right, and it's spanned over almost a century's time period. Oh, not quite, but very close to almost 100 years time period. You said there's a lot of thoughts that, things, looking at how much thoughts and ideas and virtues and all that has changed in 100 years. It's really something to sit down and actually look at it, and then, like I said, you layered that in there really well, I thought. So,
well, the main character does begin the story in the First World War, and it takes him to old age, and even a little beyond that.
Right.
But as I mentioned to you a little earlier, William, in a certain sense, this is part of the mystery. The story also spans about 40,000 years.
That is true. That is true.
In terms of what the main character discovers, what he finds, and then how he tries to learn more about what this artifact, what this object is. And that takes him to all these different places, and takes him to meet a number of these characters, some of whom are very helpful to him, and some are sinister. They're not helpful in the least.
Which was very similar to life, and our path is we will all encounter going through life, picking and choosing, who to trust and not to trust. And, I thought it was a great story that way. But so you're definitely going to continue your writing career, would you say, for sure? You have another book you've already mentioned, and we haven't gone into detail too much on that yet, but you definitely have some more you're planning. I hope you keep writing. I love mystery books myself, so I definitely look forward to them. And you have, I think, you have an incredible gift that you've been given. And
thank you.
We're gonna take a quick break here, and we'll be right back, and we'll have questions with the audience. So, I'm Dory, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Welcome back to ASA Pub News Broadcast. We're now going to go to the audience here, and we have many questions, so we're going to get started right with it. I believe Blaine, all the way in the back, we're going to